Fiery wings of fate. Jack had always dreamed of becoming a firefighter. As a boy, he watched red fire trucks roar down the streets and believed there was nothing more important than being the one who ran into danger while everyone else ran away. His friends admired the brave stories he imagined for himself, while his parents quietly worried. But Jack was stubborn, and by 22, his dream became reality. He joined the fire department. Laura lived a completely different life. Quiet, a bit dreamy, she worked in a small neighborhood library. She loved the smell of old books, late walks in the rain, and warm bergamot tea. Their worlds had no reason to ever cross, until one night when the sky over the city lit up with flames. A fire had erupted in the old three-story building where Laura lived. The wooden beams were swallowed by fire, and the smoke grew denser with every second. When firefighters arrived, most residents had already been evacuated, except Laura. She had gone back inside trying to save a tiny kitten hiding in a closet in the attic. Jack was one of the first to rush in. Thick, choking smoke filled every corridor, and visibility was almost zero. In a back room he heard faint coughing and saw the silhouette of a young woman clutching a kitten to her chest, barely conscious. "Come with me," he shouted over the roar of the fire and covered her with his protective jacket. They were almost outside when the ceiling collapsed. Jack threw himself over Laura to shield her. She survived. Jack survived, too. But when he woke up in the hospital, the doctors told him carefully and quietly. The burns and smoke damage had destroyed his eyesight. He would never see again. He didn't see Laura sitting by his bedside for days. He didn't see her tears when he smiled and tried to pretend he wasn't afraid. He didn't see her hold his hand, silently promising she wouldn't leave him alone. When Jack left the hospital, he believed his life would remain filled with darkness. Not only literal darkness, but the kind that settled deep inside the soul. But Laura came back, not once, not out of gratitude, she came to stay. She became his eyes, guiding him through streets he used to know, describing sunsets and autumn colors, explaining people's expressions, and reading books to him. Sometimes the very old library volumes that smelled of time. Through her voice, Jack learned to see the world again. Their love didn't ignite instantly. It grew slowly and softly. A year after the fire, Jack proposed. Uncertain, afraid she deserved more, Laura simply smiled. "I choose you. Always you." Their wedding was small but warm. Jack stood under an arch of wildflowers, listening to Laura's footsteps as she walked toward him. Later their son was born. Laura placed the tiny baby into Jack's arms and guided his hands over the baby's face so he could see him. Their daughter, Mia, was born a few years later, and Jack believed he could imagine her eyes just by hearing her laugh. Life wasn't easy, but it was beautiful. Laura was his sight, and Jack taught her to see with her heart. The warmth of small hands, the music of rain, the smell of morning coffee, and the peaceful breathing of a loved one sitting beside you. Sometimes, in the evenings, They sat on the porch while Laura described the sunset to him, the golden and crimson colors. And Jack would say, "If I had to choose between seeing with my eyes or seeing with my heart, I'd choose what I have now." Laura would lean on him softly. "I'm your eyes, and you're my heart," she'd whisper. "We have everything we need." Their world glowed, even for the man who could no longer see it with his eyes. Several years after Mia was born, the city hospital acquired new cutting-edge equipment, technology capable of performing extremely complex eye surgeries. Doctors offered Jack a full examination. For the first time in years, there was a small but real chance that he might regain some of his vision. The news brought both hope and fear into their home. Laura feared that if Jack regained his sight, he would see how much she had changed, how the years of stress and responsibility had marked her face. Jack feared the opposite, that seeing the world again would hurt him in ways he wasn't prepared for, that hopes could crumble all over again. But the children were thrilled. "Dad, you'll finally see my new backpack," Andrew shouted, "and my dress with the sparkles," Mia added excitedly. In the end, Jack agreed to the tests. The night before the results, Laura and Jack sat together on the porch. The evening was warm, the breeze gentle, the world unusually quiet, as though holding its breath. "Jack, what if it works?" Laura asked softly. "Then the first thing I want to see is you," he answered without hesitation. She blushed, knowing he couldn't see her. "But I'm not the same girl from the library anymore." Jack took her hand and lifted it to his lips. "You're the one who brought me back to life. I don't need any other light." Laura leaned into him, and that simple moment became one of the most important in their lives. After weeks of tests, the doctor finally spoke. "An operation is possible, but the chance of success is only 10%. There's also a risk that your condition may worsen." Jack didn't speak. Laura didn't either. The decision could change everything, or break everything. For weeks Jack struggled with the decision. He listened to the children laughing, to Laura's voice, to the soft sounds of their home. These sounds were his universe. But one day Mia climbed into his lap and whispered, "Daddy, will you ever see me dance?" And Jack knew he had to try. Not for himself, but for them. He scheduled the surgery. The surgery lasted hours. Jack woke with his eyes tightly bandaged. The doctors said it would take days to know whether it worked. Laura never left his side. Finally, the day came to remove the bandages. His heart pounded loud enough that even the nurse smiled. The bandages unraveled. A harsh flash of light stabbed his eyes, painful, overwhelming. But then, he saw Laura's blurry, hazy figure. Jack never regained perfect vision. The world remained softened, veiled in mist. But he could see. He saw Mia twirl in her favorite dress. He saw Andrew waving his drawings proudly. He saw his home, the home he'd memorized only by touch. And he saw Laura, the woman who had devoted her life to him. Now he whispered to her, "You were my eyes. Let me be your light." Years passed. Jack became a trainer at the fire station, teaching young firefighters not just safety. but the truth that courage means pushing forward even when terrified. Laura finally opened her dream project, a small cafe library where people came for comfort, books, and warm tea. Andrew decided to become a doctor, inspired by those who fought to save his father's sight. Mia continued to dance and began dreaming of a stage career. Every evening, Jack and Laura sat together and watched the sun sink behind the horizon. Jack could see sunsets again, vague shapes, soft colors, but breathtaking. But more often, he watched Laura, because no light was brighter than her smile. After Jack's surgery, life seemed to enter a new era. He could finally see blurry, hazy shapes, but see nonetheless the smiles of his children, the soft glow in Laura's eyes, the shifting patterns of light on their living room walls. But all good things are fragile. The first trouble came quietly. Headaches that Jack tried desperately to hide. He didn't want to burden Laura. She'd carried too much already. He blamed everything on fatigue, but deep down, he knew the truth. Procedures like his rarely came without consequences. At the same time, their teenage son Andrew fell into trouble at school. Kids teased him. The blind hero's son. The kid everyone pities. The boy with a tragic daddy. But Andrew wasn't weak. He fought back, too hard sometimes. While Jack was fighting pain, Andrew was fighting anger he didn't know how to control. And little Mia became a quiet shadow, smiling softly, but retreating further into her own world. The once bright house began to dim. One night, Jack woke to stabbing pain in his eyes. The world around him spun, blurred, melted into fog. By morning, he could barely see anything. Laura noticed instantly. "Jack, you're not seeing clearly again, are you?" "I'm fine," he lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." He went to the hospital that same day. The doctor's words hit like a hammer. "Complication. Your vision is fading again. And this time, it cannot be restored." Jack walked out of the hospital feeling as if the world had collapsed once more. But now he had a family, children he adored, a wife he worshipped, a life he'd rebuilt with bleeding hands. He feared only one thing: becoming a burden again. He wondered, for the first time in years, whether disappearing would be better for Laura. Not because he didn't love her, but because he loved her too deeply. While Jack wrestled with his darkness, Andrew faced his own. The bullying escalated. One boy, the worst of them, shoved Mia, taunted Andrew daily, and pushed him until Andrew finally snapped. The fight was brutal. The other boy ended up in the hospital with a broken nose and a concussion. The school exploded with scandal. His parents pressed charges. Andrew stood stiffly in front of his family, fists clenched, jaw tight. Jack, nearly blind again, placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Why didn't you tell us?" Jack asked softly. Andrew broke. "Because I have to be strong," he shouted. "You're a hero, Dad. And me? Everyone says I'm the kid they feel sorry for. I'm tired of it. I wanted to prove I'm not nobody." His voice cracked with years of fear and rage. Laura wrapped her arms around him. Jack felt something inside him twist painfully. His son had fallen into the same trap, trying so hard to look strong that he'd forgotten he didn't have to carry everything alone. Mia was softer, quieter, but fate hits gently only on the surface. She loved to dance. Dance was her world. But one night, after practice, she fell when a car braked suddenly beside her. She twisted her leg badly. Doctors did all they could. Then came the words she feared most. Returning to professional dancing will be very difficult. Possibly impossible. Mia withdrew into silence. Her smile vanished. And Laura, caught between Jack's failing vision, Andrew's anger, and Mia's heartbreak, began to crumble inside. Jack understood. If he left, he would destroy them all. Instead of pulling away, he did what he'd always done best, stepped toward the flames. He gathered his family in the living room. "Listen, I'm losing my sight again. And it hurts, I won't lie to you. But I'm not going anywhere. Without you, I'd have burned out a long time ago. I'm not a hero. I'm your father. I'm Laura's husband. And I will fight. But I need you to fight too." He turned to Andrew. "You don't have to be me. You have every right to be yourself. Strength isn't about fists, it's about your heart." Then to Mia, "I can't see your dance, but I know how you move around the house. You haven't lost it, you're just lost, and we'll find your way back." Laura covered her face with her hands, crying for the first time in months. But for the first time, she felt the family breathe again. Andrew began therapy. Slowly, the armor he'd built around himself softened. The anger began to fade. A year later, he applied to medical school. Not to be a hero like his father, but because he wanted to heal people who carried invisible pain like his. Mia started physical therapy, and though the stage drifted out of reach, something new emerged. She discovered she could teach. She began working with young children, those afraid of the stage, those too shy to move freely. Watching them dance, Mia felt something warm return inside her. Her dance still lived, just through others. Jack eventually lost his sight completely. But unlike the first time, he did not fall into darkness. He knew now that his family would not let him break. One evening, Mia turned on soft music. "Dad," she said gently, "let me show you a dance. Not with your eyes, but the way you taught me, with your heart." He stood. She took his hands. And she guided him the way Laura once guided him through city streets. He felt her dance, in her touch, her breath, her rhythm. Laura stood nearby, tears streaming. Andrew held her shoulder. And Jack understood in that moment. He could truly see, just differently. Jack became an advisor at the fire department, teaching rookies that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to move forward anyway. Laura launched a program to help families facing trauma. Her experience became a lifeline for dozens of people. Andrew became a trauma doctor. No one could speak to hurting teens the way he could. Mia opened a dance school called Inner Light for children with disabilities and those afraid to dream. Every evening, the family gathered in their imperfect but living home. Jack listened to the laughter around him and whispered to Laura, "We walked through the fire. And still, light won."